Hello and welcome. Oh, let me see. Did it
Hello,
again? There we go. All right.
James.
Welcome
Damn it.
to Tavern Talks. I am your host, GM James. I am the GM for Tabletop Misfits. We have our wonderful co-host Matt, who is our
Human son of Kisme
agent.
and Jinx.
You are legitimately the spawn of Kismia and Jinx, and we have our guest for the evening, the bearded nerd Brian.
Hey.
How's it going, y'all?
It's going good. Tonight we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna talk about world crafting, maybe figure out ideas and tips that we can come up with to help game masters make this portion of the game easier.
Mhm.
Maybe you're getting ready to start a new campaign. Maybe you're picking up a module for the first time and you're like, okay, I've got to read this entire book, but how do I bring this to life? How do I make this a little more exciting than just reading off of a page?
Ooh, we're going
And
to talk
those are
about
big
Strahd
questions.
and how bad that is and how it needs to be fixed.
I mean, it does. There's a lot of stuff. Strahd was one of them. When I was running Tomb of since I've been running Tomb of Annihilation, it's a huge sandbox, and for a lot of people, sandboxes are very unnerving, and there's no real direction. So tying those pieces together was very important for my players. Uh, but yeah, but every time we come to the tavern, we ask three questions. One, Ryan, what got you into tabletop role playing games? How long have you been playing? And then, of course, when did you decide that game mastering was the next step? And I'll pick up that mantle.
So, to answer the first question, why did I get into it? Honestly, it's pretty simple. I wanted to tell a story with my friends. That's pretty much it. I didn't find video games are awesome. I love video games. I used to play World of Warcraft. I used to play all those type of things. And unfortunately, um, video games do not have the same storytelling pool that I wanted with my friends. Right? We would have LAN parties. We would play, and it would be great. But there was camaraderie, but it wasn't the, oh, do you remember when we did this? It was like, oh man, remember when we went to this raid boss and then we did this, and that? It's not the same. I feel like once we completed the raid, it was over. You couldn't relive those memories. It wasn't fresh. It wasn't organic, so to speak. So that's really the reason why I wanted to tell a story with my friends. Um, Second question, could you remind me?
Sure.
Does this every week?
How long have you been playing?
Ooh, how long have I been playing? Well, officially, I've been playing since 2012. I say
Okay.
officially because when I first started to play, I had no idea what the heck I was doing.
I think a
Um,
lot of people are like that, though.
I mean, listen, I'm not justifying it, but I'm also justifying it because we were kids where we grew up. Culturally, D&D was not a thing. And unfortunately, um, my friends and we didn't know how to play. So we just basically made believe, right? We were playing make believe and playing fantasy make believe. My character Dane of the Misty Mountains that was my first character. You will see any of my imagery. It has Dane, a dwarf with a cigar. That was who I was. That's who I've been playing as.
Nice.
So with that being said, um, I started playing more frequently in 2012 in college, like my senior year of college. And I was really stressed out writing my thesis. And I was like, man, I want to play this again. And my roommates and I played. It was great. Great game, but it was very much like, okay, elves and dwarves and they're good, and then orcs are bad, which I don't have any problem with.
Right.
I'm okay with. But it was just, I wanted more. And then kind of the lead into your third question, I believe, of like, when did I start DMing and GMing?
Yeah.
At that moment, I was like, I want to tell my own story. I don't want to say that orcs are all bad, and I don't want to say that elves are all bad.
Right.
I want to be unique.
And I can completely respect that. And I think a lot of times we see that. And I know it gave, even I personally gave a little bit of flack to this at first when I was like, you know what? They're killing the way that the world has been played. But at the same time, uh, I think that's the fun thing of how D&D is that it allows you to change those rules. It allows you to adjust um, those
Tropes.
tropes. Yeah, best word for it. Those tropes to something that's a little different. It doesn't have to be something completely off the wall, brand new, but giving that little bit of a twist makes the game so much more enjoyable to the group that you're playing with because now you all have put this world together yourselves rather than playing in somebody else's world. And I think it's really cool. What about you, Matt? Any anything about all
Um,
this?
well, I DM at home games. I always play when I'm online with Tabletop Misfits stuff. I don't do much DMing. I've done a couple of Call of Cthulhu things, but um, my thing is I like worlds that are founded in more realistic. I like low magic. I like for people to have to figure out how magic would trying to figure out how magic would impact the way people do things, the way things in the world would work. For instance, just any economy is instantly destroyed by magic. So how do you overcome?
Thank you for stating that.
Yeah, how do you overcome somebody that can cast enlarge reduce 8 times a day on anything, and suddenly scarcity is different, and it's that's the kind of I like tackling those kind of problems. Which I mean, if you look at any of my GUI cube writing stuff, I typically write more mundane stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like writing big magic things because there's plenty of people interested in writing big magic things. So I like to write little mundane, like I'm trying to figure out how to make an ice factory right now in the Glimport out of very little to no magic, and it's been really cool leading down some roads of study of ancient technology, and so I'm learning while I'm doing that, which is really appealing.
Yeah, that's neat. I liked how you said that you're like, I don't want to be the high magic because sometimes that's what we run into is it's like
Mhm.
if there were these high magical wizards all over the place, I mean, wouldn't they always be the ones in control? Because there's no other like that's the thing, and I always think about that. Like, how does a character like let's say the king of something or the queen of something and she's not a wizard, like I'm just like really, are you sure? Because there has to be something, because the wizard's just going to walk in unless there's of course an organization where you have those strong characters that are backing those players or those people in your world, but otherwise
So that leads to an interesting discussion that is brought up if you've ever read the King Killer books. Pat Rothfuss does a great job explaining this. He asks the question: a king, basically a king, asks the main character who's a wizard, "What's greater, inherent power or granted power?" And immediately the wizard is like, "Inherent power. You can't take away power that I have." But the king is like, "Well, what if I have 20 men with swords come at you?" Because of the power that I've been granted by the people who I govern or the money that I have to pay them. That's granted power, but it can overcome things that are people who have way more inherent power. So I think that's kind of what you have to think of is what the governing bodies are doing to regulate these wizards, and kind of keep them from running wild. It would be dangerous for the wizard to get mouthy.
right, yeah.
Well, it's also, think about it. I also think of it like this: a drop of poison can dispatch of the wizard, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
Okay.
know, in my world, see the way I run my world, there is not a lot of it's not high magic,
Right.
right? Um, and the reason being is because of those questions, those problems, so to speak, right? Where why would what would be so astronomical when you compare the resurrection or true resurrection
Mm-hmm.
where okay, I can resurrect this I can revivify this person.
Right.
And all right, everything's done. Or health potions.
Mm-hmm.
Hence the reason in my world, health potions come at a very high price, right? I think health potions are average like 50 gold for like a basic. Nope, 200 gold. Like base, like it is at 200 gold because now it lets the players know, oh, this is really expensive. I should be careful. But more importantly, the story behind that. So if my players are here watching, spoiler warning, but what it is that there is a group of people who have monopolized health potions and healing magic and just magic in general, where and I've been inspired by certain anime that I watch. Like I'm not gonna lie. Wizarding guilds, things of that nature that oh, they're fun wizarding guilds that okay, you have to register if you're a wizard and you have to do all these different things. But what's the true meaning behind it? Why are you registering? Well, it's to make sure that if you cast, meteor, what is it, meteor storm or meteor swarm?
Meteor swarm.
Meteor swarm. Why did you cast meteor swarm? Like, what made you do this?
Right. Like, why did we run into this moment where you now have to cast this?
I've told James before, but I ran a half or a gnome evocation wizard from level 1 to level 20, and when I was level 20, I was evocation. It doubled the range of my evoc spells. Meteor swarm comes with a 1 mile range. It doubles to 2. I took elemental adept as a feat, so nothing can resist that damage.
Nope.
And so then I can cast
fire upon everything.
You can cast it. It's 40 d6 damage. Then I could do an arcane brilliance rest, which I rest 10 minutes, which nobody can get to me in 10 minutes from 2 miles. Then I stand up. If it's still alive, I cast it again. Yep. And then worst comes to worst, I cast wish to get another use and cast it again. And I can cast it on top of my party because I have spell sculpt. That's just a god walking around. And eventually my wizard just kind of lost his purpose. He was like, why am I here? Like, there's got to be something more, and it went from like, I'm going to go on these adventures to, I need to start figuring out how to form a country that can do better than anybody else at what they're doing.
And that's why any level 20 character that I have, whether it's a player or whoever, at that moment, they are invited into like, kind of like the Marvel's version of the Illuminati, right? Yeah. If you've read the comic books, that the Illuminati, or Marvel's Illuminati, is like a secret organization of different people that, kind of work behind the scenes.
Right.
And there are positive and negative, and rather there are different perspectives. So I can't say if it's positive or negative,
right.
But there are multiple hands in the cookie jar, so to speak. And then that throws in a really cool flair to my world.
Well, like immediately when I hit level 20, I wanted to become the new magistrate, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it's what Elemenster is. And basically he's so in tune with the weave that he's made like the avatar of it on Earth. And so like you can go into any tomb of Mistra, or any temple of Mistra, and you can pay the novices who are there, and they know instinctually who it is. Like the magister can hear every time his name is mentioned, and the like 3 words before and after it. And I was like, that seems like something that a level 20 wizard would be interested in. It's one of the few challenges left, but the only way to get it is to take down the previous magister. So it was like, I'm going to go fight Elemenster now, because that's still a challenge.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I think that's one of those things is you have to then find, because one of the main things I tell my players a lot of times when we start getting to those higher levels, and those tier 3, tier 4, is now we have to come up with, as a party or as a player, what is your purpose to get up in the morning and go out and risk your life at this point? Because otherwise, you're going to retire with ridiculous amounts of gold in your own mansion somewhere in the middle of wherever you want to be at, and nobody's ever going to bother you because you're a level 15 character and you're just sitting around doing nothing. So,
at one point, my GM, at one point with my wizard, my GM was like, I was like, how much gold do I get? He's like, just put enough next to your gold total. He's like, you have enough. And at that point, I knew how to do clone. I took a few months off so that my clone would be fully like prepared, so that I could, if I died, I would just come right back. I would lose a few
Right.
possessions, but I would be good. But you can go the opposite way of that. You can go really high magic. Gooey Cube loves to stay low magic. We always reference them, but it's something that they have some neat stuff. You were talking about liches and what necromancers imply for the world. Well, in Gooey Cube, there's a country that's Kalnavik, and he's basically created his own race called the Fazood, who he enslaved the land, and he offered people these slaves. They could become full citizens if they would become a Fazood, which is basically like a demi-lich. They accept it, they transfer him, and he's basically, the way that Alex puts it, the guy that writes him, is that he's seizing the means of immortality. He's basically redistributing immortality from the gods who have oppressed the Fazood and all of humanity by
Stalin.
limiting our.
It's very Stalin.
But he has a point. I mean, he's obviously a bad guy because he's just murdering everyone and enslaving everybody. But if you make the choice to become a Fazood, it's great. You're immortal. You no longer need stuff. You're not going to lose anybody anymore if your family's already Fazood. Like it's so you can do that high magic thing. I'm talking mainly to the other DMs listening or whatever. Just because we like low magic stuff doesn't mean that if you're doing super high magic stuff that you're doing it wrong. It's just that you have to come up with like the Fazood. It's literally that the other countries are like, this is too powerful. He's got too much. We have to put this down. And even though they don't have the kind of high magics that he does, that's kind of the why of how we're containing that. Is everybody in the world is kind of like, we need to like keep a close monitor on this and deal with it if it gets out of hand. So don't feel pressured to do it one way just because all three of us like a certain type of situation.
No, I completely agree. Also, chat, if you guys have questions, make sure you're throwing them up in the chat room. We'd love to answer questions. It's part of the why we run this channel every week on Wednesdays. Is we want to help you have better games. We want to help you get more immersed in your games, and we want to make it so that it's easier for you guys to play games and feel good about it. And that's why we bring our guests in. That's why we do everything we do is to make sure that the community that's watching this and the people that need these helps are getting it, and they're getting it easily without having to hunt for it. And that's kind of why we're here. Not to mention, putting 3 to 4 minds together on little projects like this comes up with some crazy ideas. Like we've had it happen before. So what would you say is your first step when you're getting ready to sit down and start new?
Wow, that's a good question, because I've been running my campaign for the current campaign that we're running. I've been doing it for 6 years. So I would say when I want a new idea for a world, a nation, I honestly start big picture. A lot of folks say start with the small picture, the town, the tavern, whatever. But for me, here's a good example. If I want to create a city or a town, I start to think, okay, well, where do they get their water from? What are they known for? What do they do? And then I have to kind of go that process versus when I reverse engineer it and say, okay, here's the foundation of my world. And then I can just easily stack and build upon it. That's what I normally do. I build the foundation because my time right now, especially as a new dad, working full time and all these other things that I'm doing, running my Patreon page, like it's a lot. There's a lot of things going in. So if I have the foundation, which for me is build the big picture and then fill in the gaps as needed and let my players world build. Oh, you want to do this or do that? Here's the foundation and here you go, have at it. So I usually start with the big picture. Why? That's the question. Why is this like this? What am I doing? I do the 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, why, right? I go through that motion, and that usually helps me.
Nice. That's a really good tip. Why is the biggest question you can ask on anything. I know Matt and I both have a guy that we look up to, and he writes amazingly, and that's the main thing. Anytime we're writing for the company or we're writing for ourselves, the next question is, okay, so I wrote this really cool thing. Now, why would it work? Why is it here? What is why are we doing this? And that could go anything from why is the NPC here, or why is the big bad here, to why is the mountain here? Like, if there's no reason for this mountain, where did it come from? Um, and then you can go way bigger picture, which what we were talking about is like, well, why is the planet here? Why are the gods here? Why,
Yeah.
the divine sitting? Why is magic the way it is?
Mhm.
Those types of things, when you can utilize those large macro level ideas, and you can answer those questions, your world can definitely be much different than the next person's world, because that's going to branch off to everything, which I think is really cool.
And James, I kind of have, so I've had to learn to do that because stuff that I'm writing now is getting published
Mm-hmm.
with GUI Cube. But when I sit down to DM a table, I have very, very little prep done. I have a few loose concepts of what I want, but that's how I play D&D too. I like to react to what's going on around me and what other people seem to be enjoying. I like to go with that. If there's, like the wine glass guy, we talk about him all the time. But if there's a guy in a tavern and the party is like, he pulls out a flask and a wine glass, and my party's like, what is this guy? Suddenly this guy went from just being an NPC that I had in mind to now he's the big bad that's going to show up later. But it's because I like character more than most things.
Mm-hmm.
In D&D is really what I'm about, is the RP interactions between me and the DM or me and the player.
Right.
And that's really what I'm into as a player and as a DM. But it's a good exercise, especially when I was writing for GUI Cube with the Estenosans. We have this horrible little swamp, and so we kicked around the idea of like, how are they defending this? And then finally I was like, they just don't need to. Nobody wants it.
Why would they defend it? Nobody would want it.
Nobody's going to invade. Nobody cares. It's hard to live there. There's no fresh water really, which they've kind of figured out how to adapt with.
Right.
They don't really war with each other because there's not enough resources. So it's just wasteful for them to kill each other for no reason. But it also had some negative impacts on like their eggs. They can choose whether to hatch them or incubate them for like 5-10 years. So sometimes when the eggs start going bad, they just throw them in the trash, even though that's potentially their kids. They're like, it's a hard world. We can't afford this right now. So you've got this civilization that at one point is this idealistic utopia where everybody works together. There's no violence towards
in today's
each other,
episode,
even towards the animals that they control. But on the other hand, they just this callous, lack of care for human life or Esthenosan life that's not necessary to the collective.
Right.
So it's writing is really interesting because you write something and we had all this fancy stuff written, and we were like, this just doesn't make any sense. Realistically, it makes no sense. And sometimes it's okay. Sometimes it's okay for players to see big plot holes, and you can be like, yeah, that's part of the stupidity of civilization, is sometimes stuff just doesn't make sense why we keep doing it. It's just the way it's always been done. So you have to learn to dance with that. If somebody spots a hole in your world that you're DMing, just roll with it. Let them exploit it. If that becomes a plot point that they've seen, let them go.
I absolutely agree. I don't prep. Like, I'll be honest. If I prep, it's literally me just getting images onto a PowerPoint for my virtual game. That's it. Because I use like visual components, I use audio components and things like that. In my in-person games, I'm using everything plus my minis and my terrain and all that good stuff. But I don't prep. Like I said, I have the foundation created and built. So when they're in this particular region, I know what's going on. I know the current events that are going on. And if people don't want to, go down that path, fine. They can do their thing. If they want to go down the rabbit hole, well, buckle up.
That's actually kind of a good transition point maybe to modules. Because GMs who don't like to prep, like I don't like to prep, but when I have something like GUI Cube in front of me, that's a module that's pretty clearly written and not railroady, but you can adjust the tracks that players are going down to always end up in the same place. How we deal with those. And the one I always like to talk to people about is Curse of Strahd, the original, not the revamped, and how weirdly written that one was. As much as I love Chris Perkins, it felt rushed. I don't think he had time to do what he wanted to with it. And that was one of the first things I played in 5th edition. Is I had somebody run Curse of Strahd, and we got so bored with Strahd. And I'm curious as to how you guys who DM a little bit more, how you felt about it if you've run it. And if not, if I was about to say, if not, we could talk about like Out of the Abyss, because that's another kind of weird one to DM.
That one's
you might not like my answer. I do not run modules,
and that's fine. I've got
not for any reason as to my players just want a homebrew world.
Yeah, and I get that. My DM I first played for that I respect more than most DMs I've ever met, and I've met some professional guys. He refuses to play modules, and I'm like, but I wrote this. You inspired me to play D&D, and I wrote something, and I want you to play with it and like see the seeds that you planted when you taught me to play D&D. Now they're coming to fruition, and I'm having some impact on the game. He's like, I'm just not going to do it.
See, my thing with modules is this: whenever I get supplemental books, as you could probably see, the modest collection of books, I want to just put that information in my world.
Right.
Now, with modules, I will say this: if folks have a hard time incorporating the two, a module for me is like the opportunity to utilize the multiverse theory, right? Yeah. It is a plane within the plane, so to speak. It is, or rather, it's a place where they can travel to. And I've done that for a couple of things. I've had a player who was originally from Eberron. For some reason, well, I'll basically, between us as a DM, the character wanted, or the player wanted to have this person from Eberron. Essentially, they were a Warforged, Warforged paladin. And essentially their maker created siblings of Warforges, as he called himself, and it was basically go conquer this plane, go conquer that plane, very much like Invincible, like Invincible, like the Ventra? I'm trying to remember the name. It was the race of like humanoids that the main character of Invincible is. If you've read the comic books,
I haven't read the comic.
Let me take a look. It reminds me of the Saiyans in Dragon Ball too, though. That's kind of what they did with them, is they sent a Saiyan to a world when it was a baby to conquer by the time they picked him up.
Basically, that's the same thing. So he was essentially a Warforged Saiyan, so to speak, that was sent to that world to understand and then eventually conquer it. So I've had that. And again, I have no problems running modules. The only thing is, with a module, what I highly recommend, and rather, it's not that I haven't run modules. I just choose to run homebrew. Modules are one of those things that you don't need a lot of preparation, but then it leads down the path of, wait a minute, do I have to homebrew this thing? Do I have, because your players' choices are infinite, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I can't really follow this because my players, I've planned for them to go right and they're going to go left. Versus homebrew, that's pretty much on the table. So my biggest thing is, if you're going to run modules, take it with a grain of salt. Don't let it be a flashlight, not the actual map, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I tell you, one of the things that kind of soured me on modules a little is I played some Adventures League, and I've had very mixed experiences with Adventures League.
Same here.
And I started a character the first time I ever played Adventures League was Out of the Abyss, which, if you've ever done Out of the Abyss, have you ever done it, James?
I've read through it. Yeah.
So your characters don't get starting equipment at all. You get no money, you get nothing. So I did that. I was level 1 when we started. Everything was cool. It was an enjoyable experience. By the end, I had like a stone dagger, and it was great. But I was a cleric or something, and I had like used a piece of flint to nap out a holy symbol that I could kind of use. But then the next week I came back to Adventures League, and the DM that was running that wasn't there. So I had to take my character into Mines of Phandelver. And so I get into Mines of Phandelver. I have no armor, I have no healing potions, and everybody else is level 4, or whatever. And it's just a nightmare.
That's the main reason I was not a big fan of Adventures League, though. is because if it's not run right or you've got enough people jumping in and out, because the other issue is, of course, it's also XP based.
Yeah.
It's not milestone based. So, like, I have a great example. One of our players, who's been running now with me professionally as a player now for one of my pro games, was a huge Adventure Leagues person, and then he went and played Tomb of Annihilation for Adventures League. And you understand that's a meat grinder of a game.
Yeah.
You're always dying.
Yeah, it is.
And the problem was is they would get 8 people one week, 4 people the next week.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to split XP every time. So they reached Omu, and they're supposed to be level 5, and they were level 3. And they were just throwing characters at them, because when you die, you lose a level. Die, you lose a level. It's like
Yeah.
people are sitting there in level 1s, level 2s, trying to get through an area that just wasn't possible.
I mean, if
Yeah.
that was a video game, you'd probably stop playing that game.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless it was Dark Souls.
Maybe that's the
It would be a
exception.
challenge. But the thing is, and the thing that bothers me about Adventures League is you can't house rule any of that. You can't homebrew anything. You can't change stuff.
Right.
Which
I did some Adventures League. I did Pathfinder Society as well. I had a really bad time with Pathfinder Society because of one of the players. One of the players was just an absolute jerk. I'm just going to say it like, I don't know what type of language is allowed on this show, so I will restrain myself. But
I think we're mature. I think we're marked mature.
One, yes.
Yeah, I think we're marked flag mature.
In the words of Borat, he was huge pain in my asshole.
Yeah.
That's who this guy. And I mean, I'll be honest with you. I have no qualms with most people, but basically this is how the story goes. We were playing Pathfinder Society, and we had a kid, 16. This was his first tabletop role-playing experience, okay? First time. And he didn't know what to do. He didn't know the dice. He didn't know anything.
Right.
And this other player was basically telling him how to play, not teaching him, telling him. And apparently the kid did something wrong and said, and we're in the middle of combat. And the guy kind of snapped at him. And I'm just like, all right, dude, like, you got to chill. And then, at least where I live in the state that I live, after a certain time, if you can't drive. A 16-year-old, like 9 o'clock curfew. That's it. You can't drive past 9. So his mom picked him up. And he's like, hey, my mom's here. I got to go. And the guy flipped his shit. And to be on, and that's where I kind of had the last straw. Like the last straw broke. And I was like, dude, there were some choice words made. And of course, like he was, he tried to bro it out and be like, meet me outside. I'm like, dude, you don't really want to meet me outside. Like I've wrestled, I practiced jujitsu. I studied jujitsu. Like at the time I had 5 years of Muay Thai under my belt. And I was just like I was that one guy in high school that played D&D, went to Comic Cons, and then was like, hey, I got to go because I have whatever, rugby practice, or I had to like go train.
Right.
I was that guy. And honestly, that's the one thing I can't stand bullies. And I can't stand bullies who pick on people that remind me of myself. Like the one guy, and especially from a cultural aspect, there weren't a lot of game stores opening up, right? My parents, we lived in Miami. My parents are immigrants from Cuba. There wasn't a game store around. There wasn't. The first comic book I bought, for Pete's sake, was at a Rite Aid, a pharmacy. Like there wasn't that. So for me, the gaming table is a very sacred space. Like it's not even a safe space. It's a place where you can go, no matter, conservative, liberal, whatever religion you're from, it doesn't matter. You just go and you play. So that guy just like, I had a really bad experience. And I think it alludes to what you're saying. You have a conglomeration of various individuals who you don't know, you can't really vet them. And it could be really bad. Adventures League, I did not have that experience, thankfully. I had a very positive experience, but the fact that you can't do certain things that you can in a homebrew world is just kind of disheartening. And that's why I will say this. I think what Adventures League tried to capture was the kind of 1977, 74 to 80, that first 10 years of D&D where you and a group of friends would go play D&D on a weekly basis. You would do dungeon dives most of the time.
Right.
And then someone from a different town would call your local game store and say, hey, we need a wizard for this dungeon. Is there someone who has that?
Right.
Yep. We have a wizard here who's a level 9 wizard. Awesome. Can you come play to help us? You know what I mean? So it was almost like giving real life quests to players, kind of like bringing that World of Warcraft aspect. Hey, we need someone for this.
We need somebody for the raid. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And to be fair to Adventures League, we've got like Austin. Austin loves Adventures League. He's done a lot of Adventures League, DM'd for it a lot. Yep. Casey and Carrie do epics at cons, and they have a great time.
Epics are a lot more. Seeing epics at a con, I think, are a lot more interesting than doing.
I think Adventures League epics and stuff like that would work really well at cons. To be honest with you, I think modules would be great because it's a character that I don't want to say it's a throwaway character, but if you have a dedicated group of individuals who go to a con once a year, let's say whether you go to Gary Con or Gen Con or we had local to us, we had a con called Mace Con. And this is the last year because of some personal reasons with the individual who used to run the con. Unfortunately, he's terminally ill. So
hopefully somebody picks that up.
We're in the works with that. I'm trying to help out as much as I can, just, with as much time as I have, because I do think it's important. But when you go to a con, and I mean, from my experience, for the past 3 Mace cons that I used to go to, I would see my group of friends that I never see except for that con. And we would play an epic. We would play almost like our own version of Adventures League. Heck, I mean, I would DM in my own house because I'm just the type of person that like, hey, when you come into my house, you're a friend. Like I trust you well enough.
100%.
You know what I mean? But I think the concept of Adventures League and Pathfinder Society is a good one. I just think that it needs to be reworked and re-imaged, so to speak.
I think DMs need to be empowered a bit more. Is what I would say.
Don't get me started on that. In many ways, I think the DM needs to be empowered in those scenarios.
Yeah, and this way at GUI Cube, we really work for that for our modules, especially in con games. Is if somebody comes and they're like, hey, we're having this problem, like, just homebrew it, dude. Just whatever you got to do. You know what point A and point Z are. Anything else within those 2 points is your discretion. We have artwork and maps for everything you're going to see, but do what you need to do. If you need to cut something or add something, go for it. That makes it even better.
Plug and play is fantastic. I think the content that I've created and that I've shared, well, rather the content that I've shared on social media is just things that I've used because with 5th edition, it's a lot of great foundational work, but there is a lot of opportunity for us to plug and play. Okay, here's a good example. I think every dungeon master should utilize a table of NPCs, 5 to 10 NPCs that they can plug and play in any scenario, and it should be good, right? I think that's a beautiful thing, and I think it's a very crafty thing because it allows you, just like you said, oh, this isn't going to work out. Well, let me plug this NPC in and see how it goes. Maybe, the plot that I originally placed for the players to kind of nibble at, it's not biting. Now I place an old pirate or an old, kind of weather-worn individual who is just drinking, smoking his pipe, blah, 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 blah. Okay, his name is Jean, has a French accent, Yep. Now you have it. And I think that's where like empowering your DMs is really important. And it comes down to, and I really think it comes down to not only teaching DMs how to do this, but giving them the tools, the techniques, and the actual, product, so to speak, right? The actual tangible, thing. It could be either a paper thing. I mean, one thing I really like, I like the deck of stories, 1985 games and Critical Dice, deck of stories, deck of rumors. Like this is by Unlimited Realms. Like there's, I utilize a lot of these things because it really helps me in those regards. And again, I'm only stating that because at the end of the day, if you're not empowered as a DM, you are in the wrong system.
Right.
Like, it's a very unpopular opinion because I love Pathfinder. I love D&D. I love a lot of things about D&D. Star Wars 5th edition, if y'all haven't played it, chef's kiss. It's amazing. But if you don't feel empowered, you're playing the wrong system.
I tell you, really, I do that. I have a roster of like little NPCs, and James, you've heard Whitney. You may have heard Whitney in the background talk about like she wants me to do Xanthony and something because I have this NPC named Xanthony that my players, every time there's something like there's a lull or they don't know where to do, they just go find this NPC. It could be for a different campaign. Everybody just knows who Xanthony is. And there was an episode of South Park about the planetarium, and there was this guy, and he was like, "Welcome to the planetarium," and he just like was just really odd, and he had this like this cult.
Yeah.
And I took that affectation for Xanthony on how he speaks, and he's just constantly like wide-eyed and just like kind of like looking around. But what he does basically is he's an enchanter, and like he pays adventurers to come in and try magic items that he's made. Right. And I'll roll on like a wild magic surge chart as to what happens to him. And they just love it. They'll just stand there and just let him, like, you're invisible now for the next 10 hours. And they're just like, again. They're just like slot machining him. And finally he can just send them out to go get stuff for his, for his experiments that he's doing. And they love it. I
think those are real simple ways of setting new plots up. Or let's say you start to get into that lull, like, okay, you finished your arc, you're not really sure the next steps yet, so then you can throw those NPCs like Xanthony out there and be like, hey, I just need you to go get X.
Yeah, and sometimes your players will turn it into something. Like,
exactly.
I really thought with Xanthony, he was set up for them to be someone that they really wanted to kill. Like, just like eliminate him because he's too creepy to exist. But they defended Xanthony with their lives. They were like, Xanthony is the greatest boy.
I know somebody like that.
Yeah, and they're just like, I love Xanthony. And I was like, okay, like there's going to be 100% more Xanthony now. Like, you get him. Like, he's going to be a main dude. And they love it. And that's what's fun with a DM is a lot of times they attach to stuff that you're just like, why do you care? And just let them have it.
I know, Matt.
Yeah, just let them have it. Literally, James is talking about this NPC that I named Security Chief Lucas in our stream game. And I was making a Star Trek joke, and there were some silk merchants there, some textile merchants, and they had 2 red shirts and a gold shirt. Or they had 3 gold shirts, and I dyed 2 of them red.
Yeah.
And I put on the gold one, and then I gave these 2 red shirts to these 2 random guards that we had that were coming with us. And one of them, James, was like, no, I hate this. And she throws it on the ground, but the other guy puts it on. And the second he put on that red shirt, like, he became my character's goal in life was to get him to come with us and to be our friend and like to help him grow as a person.
Everyone needs Boblin the Goblin.
Yeah, just let it happen. Like, characters, if a character is attaching to something, that means there's an emotion there. Yeah, and let them have that emotion. Like, that's what we're trying to do.
Right now, there is a character in my hybrid game that his name is Zyn, Zyn, and he's a drow. And he was actually rescued by one of the party members. And he kind of is this like bodyguard to the specific individual that rescued him. But what they don't know is that as the players get attached to this character, this NPC they're going to scale with the party, obviously, but this character has a lot of backstory. This is the key for them to get into the Drow Empire. Right. Mm-hmm. This is one of those things in my world, at least. This is a great way. And there's a lot of emotion attached to it. I'll bet you my bottom dollar that if Zyn were to die, right, there would be a lot of emotions to it because they've grown attachment to it. Right. I think that's really beautiful. I think that's an amazing part of D&D. I'm not the type of individual I know there's some DM styles that say, well, kill off the NPCs, kill off the players every time you get ha. I'm not like that. It's a story you're trying to tell together. But I say all this because you mentioned about how there were some inside jokes with your NPCs, but specifically how you had this, I believe it was Xanthony, correct?
Yeah.
That was this individual that you plug them into your game and the players ran with it.
Yeah.
I think my thesis when it comes to NPCs, one, if your players aren't going to do that, don't even prep them. Just prep a name, an occupation, and maybe an accent or two, right? If your players are going to spend 80% of their time with this individual, go ahead and go ham and do all these things. But I don't know if y'all noticed this. Have you noticed where players, when you've prepped every NPC in the town, and then they only focus on 10% of them, do you get frustrated? Because I know I do. There were times where I used to get frustrated, right? And if you, yeah, I was gonna say,
I don't do that anymore because
I was gonna say
nuts.
At that moment, you figure out I'm just gonna repurpose these and just maybe put a different name on them and just go from there.
So that is one thing that I super love about the Darkenhaven box and the Glenport box that we're doing in Gooey Cube. We talk about Gooey Cube a lot because that's consumed our lives.
It has.
But
it's okay. That's all good.
In this city, it's just a city box. There's no like overarching plot there. There's some world guides and stuff, but it's literally crowdsourced.
It's a giant box of encounters is all.
Yeah, it's a conglomeration awesome. that everybody in our Discord and our Writers Guild, probably 200 contributors, have put work in. So it's a map with probably 1,000 locations.
Could you send me the Discord link? I'd love to.
Yes. So it's probably awesome. I don't know, James. I didn't work in the Darkenhaven group. I'm in the Glenport. How many contributions do you think? A few hundred at the least.
There's 200 at least.
But each shop that they go into, because it was written by a contributor who we asked to do 1 or 2 shops, each one is so well loved because it's these DMs and these players who put their Xanthony in this shop, their NPC that their players fell in love with, and they have stat blocks, and each one has a little tiny plot hook.
That's going to be a little different than how, because like there were multiple levels of how we've built these box sets.
Yeah,
because like I was on the larger project of building the entirety of a district out.
I gotta check that out. I really want to purchase one just because I think that's so cool. Like,
it's, as a GM, it's such a neat tool to have, just like this box of beloved characters that people really love.
I mean, that's the main thing with Gooey Cube. It's why we all got it. It's why Matt and I both got involved in it. It's why we talk about it all the time.
Yeah,
because that's what it does. It's everything that comes in it is a box. It's not. Yeah. It's not a book. It's not some maps. It's everything inside.
And I love that because it reminds me of the old school text-based RP that folks used to be a part of, right?
Yeah.
In different back in the day when there was forums.
Yeah. I'm still part of those things. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Hey man,
we're actually working on one for our Discord.
Okay, please let me know because that would be awesome. Like, I got back into text-based RP when I started playing with Ray from AK Got DM on Instagram.
I need to meet him too and get involved.
I will introduce you. I will introduce you to him because my man's over here has been building terrain, crafting terrain, and all this other color. I mean, you've probably seen the 1,000. We were talking about it earlier. There's an image of him, of like a picture he took of a 1,000 goblin figure army. 1,000 goblins. And I'm over here like, okay, that's legit. And then when I thought I was pretty cool being like, oh, I'm going to incorporate this text-based RP so that everyone, like even like my players who can't really play often, but they can RP on Discord.
Right.
Cool. This man's been doing it. Him and I'm very lucky and honored to be a part of this game. But I think that's a resurgence that's coming up. What y'all are doing with Gooey Cube, where it's like, okay, everyone has contributed to it, and therefore there's ownership, and then there's emotional investment. Right? That you don't find that in a lot of places. I'm not knocking any other publication. I mean, listen, I love anything that I can use for D&D. I'm all for it.
It's just a different feel, you know. I mean,
with that's D&D, exactly what it is. It's a different
with D&D, feel. With Wizards specifically, you've got 4 or 5 artists, 4 or 5 authors who control everything.
True,
and that's the way with Gooey Cube. You know, even in Glenport, there are 9 of us lead writers, and we have 5 to 6 writers who are below us. and we're writing like big contributions, but then we're going to get the influx of all of the contributions that the GUI Cube Den of Enlightenment that they've put in, and then we're going to sort those out and put them where they need to go and make it make sense. And that's just something that you don't get. It's new. It's new. It's water deep, but we made it together. Is really.
But here's a question: 5th edition, though. What other system could you run it in if it wasn't 5th edition?
And that's,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
I feel like or not 5th. Let's just not even say 5th edition. Let's just say D&D.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Unless you went to something like GURPS, maybe, or
maybe GURPS.
Yeah, but no, I'm with you. D&D. Gary Gygax has given us the tools, and GUI Cube. I've gotten to be a team captain for Luke Gygax. Suck it, James. We were both team captains at a GUI Cube event, and I got to be a team captain for Luke Gygax, which is crazy.
That's legit. This is the thing. I feel like Dungeons and Dragons, and then Pathfinder, and then kind of trickles down, are the type of systems that allow for that. Now, because the thing is, like Call of Cthulhu. Call of Cthulhu for me is too dark horror for what I like to run.
Careful.
Well, listen, I like Call of Cthulhu, but I also, as a dungeon master, have to cater to my players.
Yeah,
right.
Like, no, I get.
Some of my players get triggered by some of the things that Call of Cthulhu brought.
We have to. We have to watch with that with GUI Cube though, because they do have some pretty dark.
Dark stories. Themes.
And the thing is this: there are individuals that, because I'm a huge Tolkien fan. I have.
Me too. I love it.
Not just
I'm not too sure about the new series coming out.
It's going to be fine. It's not going to be great, but it's going to be fine.
Okay, so this is the thing about that. If you would allow me to rant a little bit about this series, I am not expecting it to be Tolkien-esque, because they have come out and said that this is basically the quote novel that Tolkien did not write. Yeah. Which basically tells you all that it is. It is a Tolkien inspired. It's okay.
It's fanfic.
It's a fanfic. It's a fanfic, and which is completely fine. It's absolutely fine. Right. But for me,
it's going to feel different.
It is going to feel different, but I'm still excited that fantasy is being brought into that big picture, right? And obviously there's the legal stuff. Amazon does not own, ironically, and actually a lot of people forget this, they don't have the ownership rights to the estate did not sell those rights.
They're getting close though. They just got The Hobbit.
I know. But what I've heard through the grapevine is that the estate will basically, if they sell it in the contract, a member of the estate will, and I think it's like in perpetuity, will have to be their consulting. They took a lesson from what Stan Lee did with Marvel. Stan Lee, they basically in Stan Lee's contract with MCU was like, I have to consult on this. Like, you will not get my approval. It's what George Lucas kind of should have done. Let's be honest.
George Lucas needs to get out of Star Wars.
Yeah, but you
heard about his name for Darth Sidious, or not Darth Sidious, what he wanted Darth Maul to be called, right? When they asked him.
No, I didn't.
He suggested Darth Icky. No joke was his suggestion. George Lucas has run out of ideas. He did really great. He has,
but out. But I'll be honest too. Dave Filoni and Favreau have done a great job taking over. And the thing is that even if George Lucas wants to be a part of it, well, okay. He still needs to give, someone needs to basically learn from him, aka Filoni. Filoni learned from Lucas and went from there. I say all this because at the end of the day, again, Call of Cthulhu, right? The thematic tones that Lovecraft portrayed, that a lot of people say Tolkien did, but in reality, Lovecraft was the one that portrayed a lot of the certain themes and tensions that occurred. And I only say this because I'm a historian by trade. I
am as well.
I specifically studied cultural historiography. That was my bread and butter. That was what I was trained to do. And I mentioned that though because some of the things, have been switched around. I mention all that though, because at the end of the day, we have a system. We're very lucky to have a system in Dungeons and Dragons that allows us to make the fanfics, right? Just like what Tolkien did.
Right.
Tolkien created a foundation that now we can create all these different worlds, all these different games, all these brilliant stories. And I think like something that y'all are doing with GUI Cube, like it really works well in Dungeons and Dragons. It would really work well in Pathfinder.
Yeah.
Maybe not as much as Call of Cthulhu. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
But it works well. You know what I mean?
And going back to I just want to touch on the the Lord of the Rings series again, because here is the hope that I have for all of the people. I'm a military history guy, so Lord of the Rings holds a special place because of the origins with it being based on World War One. But keep in mind that if you're a Wheel of Time fan, Wheel of Time was not finished by its original author. It was finished by Brandon Sanderson, who that scared the crap out of a lot of Wheel of Time fans when he took over, and he did a beautiful job and has become one of the greatest fantasy writers in history since. Stormlight Archives saga was great, and the last part of Wheel of Time was really great. I know he had some coaching, but still, I mean, there is hope, and like we were talking about with Favreau, he's done, I don't know who would have suspected that he would be the man that saved Star Wars. That he would be on that team. He would be on that team, because that's not what, I mean, if you ask me if Jon Favreau could direct anything, I remember Couples Retreat when he was just like this weird comedy actor. But he's brilliant.
Matured. He's matured.
He's brilliant.
I think what it was is this. Favreau, if you see his work, he did Iron Man. Yeah. But when you when he's been in interviews, he was like, yeah, I played Dungeons and Dragons. I was a halfling thief. Yeah. He cut his teeth in D&D because it's storytelling.
Right.
Just like Dungeon Master, directors and Dungeon Masters do a really good thing. When they sink their teeth into something that they love, they run with it, right? And that's where, like, Dungeon Masters, I mean, there was a previous question. It's the previous question that makes me think of this is, where do you start world building, right? Start with what you love. If you love military history, start with the Battle of XYZ. Start with, how do the gnomes in your world create formations to attack? Like in my world, the Alessian Empire is the gnome empire, but they are steampunk Rome. Like, it is like the gnomes are in Praetorian, attire and all this, but they have airships because they're the only ones that they've developed the technology and will not sell the technology. So they have a monopoly on the technology. But, gnomes are 3 feet, I think. Yeah. So gnomes, their fighting style is based upon not only like turtle formations and whatnot, but they have a very unique style where when they are in that kind of shield wall, 3 gnomes at a time go and attack, kind of like berserkers. They go attack that creature all at, so it's basically a 3-on-1, and then they retreat back. So if you love that type of thing, you go to that thing. And I think that's something that, it's really worth talking about with the new Lord of the Rings show. If you do love it, give it a shot. Do what you got to do. But
I'm still gonna give it a shot, because I think it's gonna still give some sort of connection.
And with that, Tolkien was a linguist guy, right? I mean, he was a linguistics guy. That's what he loved, and so he started with writing
languages.
How many languages did he?
9.
I think, I don't think all of them are permanently, like, I don't think all of them are usable. I think only a couple, 3 of them are actually like you could fluently speak, and like
Elvish, Black Speech, and I believe Dwarvish.
Yeah. I think they're actually usable.
Yes.
But
the Dwarvish. So not to show my nerd card here. I wish I had the anime glasses that when I poked up my, it would just light up my lenses. But Dwarvish, Elvish, and Black Speech were the 3 languages that you can learn and speak fluently. Yeah. So if you want to add that to your resume.
I have it on. I actually have Elvish and High Valerian on my Duolingo that I do from time to time.
It's on Duolingo?
It is. I think it's in as Sylvan in Duolingo, and then High Valerian, Dothraki is on there. Klingon is on there. There's a few nerd languages on Duolingo, but
I'm writing that down.
yeah, it's just follow what you like. Alphinius is a map guy at GUI Cube, so everything has a map. That's what he freaks out about, and we spend hours upon hours upon hours in anything that we do doing maps.
Nice.
And it's great. DMs love maps, but it's just do what you enjoy first and foremost.
But I didn't want to show you some of the stuff, so I did break out one of our boxes because, like you were saying, things that you can use interchangeably, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we were talking about NPCs, and this is one of the things I love using. So like, if I have no idea who an NPC is, dude, I've got this many cards.
Damn.
That's from chapter 1 of the module.
Just from one chapter.
Yeah.
Damn.
And the great thing about those cards is on the back they have cheat sheets about who they are,
Yeah,
like what they do, that kind of thing.
See, and the cards.
Okay, that's pretty legit.
Yeah.
Like any of
And they're big too, so you can actually see the artwork.
Yeah. Hang them on your DM screen, whatever. And the artwork for the modules is the same. They're all 8.5 by 11 sheets that you can slide into your
these are the maps.
your protector or whatever.
And let's be honest, like I don't know what it is, but I would rather have, like, don't get me wrong. Ooh, hold up. Sorry, before I say that. Dang.
Yeah.
So that's like the map of the area.
Yeah.
That's gorgeous.
The new Darkenhaven map is I think it's 9 of those.
Well, no,
stitched together.
Is 6.
Oh yeah, Gloomport is 9.
Gloomport is 9.
Gloomport is fantastic, by the way. That's going to be amazing. So it's basically, if you're an old D&D guy,
I need to finish my adventure so I can go start writing for
everybody knows Waterdeep, right? Do you remember Skullport?
Yeah.
The thing under it. So Gloomport is basically Skullport, but fixed. Because Skullport, like, you had to teleport in. So basically, the Gloomport is, there was a big thing called the Woverun that was a cataclysm that wiped out the whole world.
Mhm.
Well, everybody on the city on top, which was Darkenhaven, when they see this coming, they all migrated through these tunnel systems into the port that was below, which was Gloomport, and lived there for, I don't know, 30, 40, 100 years. I'm not sure how long they had to ride out the woe, but so it's going to be really cool and gritty and sailory and piratey down there. And there's actually a river that comes in from the Underdelve, which is the Underdark there. So you've got all these monsters sneaking out constantly, and it's really cool. But anyway, James, we probably need to talk about this monster.
Oh yeah, we do. We need to talk about the monster. So if you're still in the chat room and you're still hanging out, if you can just give me real quick, just throw up the name of the monster you think this is. We're gonna do about 5 more minutes, and then we're gonna talk about this monster.
That's Willem Dafoe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we have anybody directly listening, or if everybody's just kind of lurking and hanging out with us on the back.
I think we have some lurkers.
We have some lurkers.
We always have lurkers on this, but that's kind of
we
the
always
show.
Have lurkers on this, but
the show is very lurkery.
Yeah.
I'm looking at I'm looking at the chat as well on my phone, and I'm trying to get. I know what the monster is, but and it may or may not be William Dafoe.
It is Willem Dafoe.
Not his brother, William Defriend.
Yeah.
Sorry, dad joke, y'all. Sorry.
It is, but that's okay. Yeah, world building is crazy, and James and I have got a little bit more taste of that than we did before. I think luckily with getting some opportunities with GUI Cube, but
yeah.
Well, I think that world building is so, like, when you're as a dungeon master, as a game master, world building is really 80% of it. Like, and I've talked about this before, where if you can save time with world building by repurposing, reusing, or plugging and playing content into it, you can just build upon it, right? You don't have to utilize, like, okay, here's a good example since we're talking about Tolkien. I utilize the notion that elves are immortal in my world.
Mm-hmm.
And they have I don't like the elves with the long ears. I like this kind of the short eared, like, I like that.
Not blood elves.
Yeah, no. I definitely like Tolkien. Yeah, exactly. I like Tolkien style, elves.
Right.
But in my world, the reason why they have long life or, immortality is not the same as it would in Tolkien's world, which is what world building is. You take what you like and you repurpose and re-image it for your world.
Right.
Sure.
So I'm
That's the beauty
curious
of it.
because that's what I'm curious about, because you said this is one of your favorite monsters that you like to talk about. And we don't have a ton of time to talk about it, but we are going to get some
I'm
time to talk about it.
sorry
So
about that. I can, like I said, I can talk about D&D stuff for a long time.
no,
Oh, I think we had like 30 seconds for the monster last week because we were talking
Oh,
about
okay.
dumb Warhammer stuff.
yeah,
We
you
were talking
guys,
about dumb Warhammer lore with James.
they dove into Warhammer, and I glassed over
Yeah.
for about 20 minutes because I don't know
Snorting,
anything about Warhammer.
It's
snorting
okay.
dark elf poop to get high, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff is what we were talking about last time.
You do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of great dumb Warhammer lore.
So
But
this monster is one of your favorites,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to reveal it, even though we don't have anybody saying anything in the chat right now. But we probably just got a ton of lurkers, and it's okay.
we do have quite a few lurkers.
All right. So our monster of the week is the Hobgoblin. Specifically, the one I found was the Warlord, but that's because D&D was giving me a hard time finding just a regular Hobgoblin. So I was like, no, we'll do the Warlord.
It happens.
But so I'm curious, why the Hobgoblin?
I like the Hobgoblin because I have used the Hobgoblin for one, many combat reasons. It's a great monster to throw at your players.
Mm-hmm.
No matter the tier. And if, again, for those out there who are just, listening and understanding, like, and may or may not know the different tiers of D&D play,
Right.
like tier 1, you are local adventurers. Maybe the town knows you.
Right.
Okay. So if they fight a Hobgoblin, that's pretty tough. That's going to be pretty cool. Tier 2, in my opinion, is you are getting to the city to a regional fame, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a Hobgoblin who's leading a war band or a legion of individuals that's threatening the city, right? Let's think of Rome, when Rome used to get sacked and things of that nature. Okay, that would be a pretty cool foe to fight.
Oh, yeah.
The third tier of play with nations and worlds, at that point, you're dealing with nations and worlds and things of that nature. The Hobgoblin's a great general. The Hobgoblin is really warlike, right? They're based upon war, and
Mm-hmm.
at least
They're
in my
Uruk-hai.
yeah, they're
I mean,
Uruk-hai.
they really are.
Yeah.
But in my world, I definitely utilize that. They're very militaristic. However, I consider them more like the samurai. It's a warrior honor code. They have a code of honor where they respect certain, so not very much like the code of chivalry. I personally like the code, the samurai code, where they
Bushido.
the Bushido code, where there's other things that are influenced in the code of Bushido versus like the code of chivalry in Western Europe, where it's like, okay, this is a certain code we live by. And it's mostly for like landed gentry, not necessarily the knights did utilize it, but landed gentry and whatnot, and the nobility class, like they had to really utilize all the intricacies versus Bushido. Like, even, and again, this is the cultural aspect, right? Bringing up the cultural historiography in me. Even the Ronins said, I am willingly choosing to not, abide
Not
by
serve
this,
a lord. Yeah.
not serve a lord, and I am a cultural reject, so to speak, an outlaw. So, in my opinion, that's how I view the Hobgoblin. The Hobgoblin has so much potential to do all that, right? And I mentioned tier 3 play. That could be a general. Again, this is not that historically accurate, but I do enjoy the film The Last Samurai. Tom Cruise is The Last Samurai. Okay, whatever.
Okay.
But Ken Watanabe's character played a fantastic, who was so married to tradition and and that was his identity as a samurai, was what his father was, what his grandfather, and so on and so forth. That is what I see the potential with the hobgoblin. The hobgoblin oozes this potential versus the elf or the dwarf.
Mhm.
The hobgoblin oozes this, sense of honor and duty if you role play it the right way. You don't have to role play it with the type. You can role play against type, but there's a really good middle ground with the hobgoblin. That's why I love the hobgoblin.
I like that. No, I really do. And even looking at just the armor type, it's got that very intricate looking sword. So it's not going to be somebody that's always going to be up front. He's going to be the one ordering from behind or ordering from the side, making sure that the units are staying in order. And I really think that's yeah. I like how you broke that down because he's like the hobgoblin can be any of them.
I'm
It
going
can
to say
be
something a little daring.
okay.
The
Go for it.
hobgoblin is, from a racial perspective, is the equivalent of the paladin from a class perspective. They have an
Okay,
oath that they're dedicated to.
I
The
can see that.
hobgoblin has a potential to not only be a berserker, but to really be a fighter, a martial class. The hobgoblin could be, like, the way I view hobgoblins is that the hobgoblin makes an oath and a dedication towards the one thing. So whether it's to be a cleric or a sorcerer or whatever, they're dedicated to be this one thing that is really like important.
Which is interesting you say that because hobgoblins are one of those classes or one of those races where you can now play as a class or as a player, and that makes perfect sense because they would focus, they would dedicate themselves to whatever that
Correct.
class would be. No,
I
that's really
have
cool.
a really weird relationship with hobgoblins. I
Sure.
had a friend in my first campaign I ever played that played a hobgoblin, and it was a pain in the ass to have him around at all times because we would try to go into cities and he refused to bathe and he was just causing all kinds of problems. So I just get these flashbacks every time I hear the word hobgoblin, but they are really cool.
Yeah.
I like them more as an enemy than as a playable race. But I think D&D has given us too many options for playable races, if I'm honest. I like,
So
and I say that, and I'm a writer for GUI Cube, which has 72 races, but
they have more than
uh,
that
Damn.
technically.
one of them's not real though. One of them's kind of fake, and they're not all written yet. Brian, don't get too excited.
Yeah, no, they're not all
Basically,
written.
each one of the gods got to make a race except one, and then he got butthurt and kind of like
Made his own.
did his own thing, and then
That's kind of,
Kalnovich.
yeah, that's Veritrix, who's the BBG in my world. Basically same thing, one of the same
Yeah.
premises was not able to. So
Well,
instead
the other gods, like, since he's the god of the dead, the other gods were like, no, you get everybody eventually, so you don't get a living race. But he made the Skundrews as kind of a backdoor thing, and then you have the Fazood who are made by a
yeah,
lich. There's a few extras, but
Yeah.
by and large,
Then
each
you've
god
got the
got one.
Anandra Oz, which are the automaton or automaton
Yeah, but aren't
thingies.
they? Are they not? I thought they belonged to somebody, but I guess not. I guess they're artificial as well.
Yeah, they're artificial
But
because they belong to the Aetherns.
I think I get what you're saying, but I do wish that they would thin down some of them because I want some races to just be the bad guy. I want hobgoblins to just be Urkai. I don't need a redeemed hobgoblin in my life, is what I'm saying, I guess. Uh,
Which
Same
you
with
might know.
goblins. I kind of my wife plays a goblin barbarian and she loves it. It's her favorite thing she's ever done. But it's just like you're a goblin and I just want to kill you. Like you're
well,
supposed to be a rank and file nerd.
and that's the thing too, like, at least for me, like, I heavily utilize the whole goblinoid orc type where evil.
Mm-hmm.
um and I decided to make the change because I really like playing with perspective.
Yeah.
um and kind of to allude to that, I am a huge fan of pinning, because I have multiple groups of players, right? I have pods, so to speak.
Mhm.
I love pinning them against each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've done that before too. One of us played a good campaign, the other played an evil campaign, and eventually we came to blows.
Well, and let me clarify. It's about perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Each player and each party thinks that they're playing the good campaign, yet
Okay.
the other party has. So let me give you an example. I once had a group of 3 or 4 players who completely, like, they were the murder hobos, right? The typical murder hobos. And they uprooted this this duchy, so to speak, called Garceau. And they basically usurped the leadership, found out that they were vampire lords, but then found out that they weren't like evil vampire lords. They were in hiding from like the coven and whatnot, because they decided not to abide by certain laws and rules. Well, come to find out, the other party of my in-person group is now dealing with that whole catastrophe.
And the kind of rebellion and power vacuum it causes and that kind
which
of thing.
Now they view this other group of party members as their BBEG.
Yeah. And I get that. I guess the thing is I play orcs in 40K. That's what I've always played.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's just something super charming and like a relief about just like orc. These orcs, they don't have like complex motivations. Their motivation is we really like fighting crap. And like, and nobody would be
every
sadder.
Campaign needs that.
Yeah. And nobody would be sadder about like winning the war than the orcs. Because if they killed everybody else, there would be nobody else to fight, and it would just be the end of the universe for them.
And I think every campaign needs a monster of some sort, or a monstrous race or whatever. That's just the orc, right? Like that's just we bonk people on the head. And again, that's why, like, when I first started running my campaign, it's like goblins and kobolds and orcs were that creature. It's like, hey, my players had no problem just wiping them out because that's who they were.
Yeah.
But as the parties have increased in my world, in my game, the perspective has changed because 1, time has passed, but 2, I've catered to my players.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of it, though. I think that you can still marry the two and say, okay, we're going to have a monstrous creature, which now I've made demons and devils and fiends and abominations. Like, abominations specifically are like the one that just World War Z zombies that are just like wild and crazy. And it's like, even the evil people are like, damn, we need to like kill them. Like, that's not good. But no, I think every campaign deserves and needs one of those races that's just, you just wipe them out. Like, you just demolish them.
Yeah.
And eat them out of existence.
I think that, like, especially goblins and stuff, because even amongst the orcs, like, goblins are like, you guys shut your mouths, because if you're lucky, one day you'll become an orc. Like, you get bigger until eventually, like, and I just love that about goblins, is that you have orcs who are like the most brain dead like things on the planet, and then the goblins are like subservient to them, and they're like, you guys are really cool. And I love that about goblins. And like, I guess that's why it kind of weirds me out that somebody would want to play one. But at the same time, it depends on the setting. I mean, there's settings where goblins are
absolutely
just as sentient and are sapient and capable of complex thoughts and that kind of stuff, and that's great. Just not my setting. In my setting, they're going to just run around and do weird stuff.
Well, goblins are like the little brother to the orcs that the orc mom basically said, you got to take your little brother with you. And it's the goblin.
Well, I mean, and it's like with squigs and goblins, they just kind of use them whatever purpose they need. Like, did you know if you look on a 40K orc model, they have little top knots, right? Some of them have these little red top knots. No orc is actually capable of growing hair. Those are not hair. Those are the pigs that they have, the squigs. Those are a very specialized type of squig called a knot squig that they attach to their head, and it looks like hair. I mean, that kind of monster design to me is just so stupid and like ridiculous and funny that I love that. I just love these like really weird brain dead races. Especially
those are needed. I think it's still needed though in D&D. You know what I mean? Like,
I can get that.
But what I'm saying is, I think we need some of those, like, I'm gonna bonk you on the head, and it's like, okay, every time the players see an orc, they're like, a fight's about to brew. Cool. Yeah. Like, we all need that at times too. Like, and I also just think it's like, if for the dungeon masters out there who want that excuse, like I want to give y'all permission to say, you know what, like run that.
Yeah, just relief every
I'm
once in
that
a
way
while.
with I'm that way with
That's the
gnolls.
word. Thank you. Relief.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm that way with gnolls. Gnolls are my
Same here.
go-to. Just they are the bloodthirsty,
Yep.
ravaging everything type creature.
That's the I would agree with you. The gnolls in my world are just bloodthirsting, ravenous creatures that aren't really like intelligent and
they don't have a big society. I mean, they're very nomadic. They kind of go from campsite to campsite.
yeah, that's the creature in my world that I would say that every player's like right now there is a bounty for like gnolls, like
Ears.
anytime.
No ears, yeah.
Yep. Like they're like you collect, you get X amount of gold per X amount of gnoll ears, and my players go crazy over it.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest, I really want to start playing. I would love to play some Warhammer Rogue Trader because the orc design is just so amazing with them. Because James, you don't know a lot of Warhammer lore. Did you know that orcs are actually the most powerful psychic beings in the universe?
No, I didn't.
Interesting.
So if an orc believes something, they produce a powerful psychic field that makes that thing that they believe so. And the more of them believe the same thing, the more of them believe the same thing, the more widespread that thing gets. So like orcs don't have engineers. Like for instance, on orc spaceships, the windows roll down and they don't die in space, even though they're in a vacuum, because they just believe that you can roll the window down and you'll be fine. And like one of the Space Marine chapters, the Ultramarines, the big blue guys who are super lucky and they do all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's confirmed in the lore. The reason they do so well is because orcs believe that the color blue is lucky. And since every orc in the universe believes that blue is lucky, these Ultramarines who constantly wear blue are just lucky. And that's just the way it is. And,
I love that.
But they have no concept that they're capable of that. Like they don't know that that's the way that they work.
Right.
But it's amazing. I mean, just like in the way that they work too is their technology. If there's more of them, so they start on a fantasy world basically. And then when they get big enough and they've taken enough control, then suddenly a mech boy will be born and he just knows how to build cars. And then more of them are born and he knows how to build dreadnoughts. And I just want that in a fantasy world, a race like that. That's just like, they're super dangerous when they get in hordes, not because of just killingness, but just they have some kind of weird psychic, just presence that they don't understand.
Well, it's almost like you take that group of orcs and you throw them in an area where there's already a lot of technology and they're just staring at it extremely hard, and then all of a sudden now somebody knows how to do it. Frightening thought.
Well, it's even less sophisticated than that. Like if they get their arm blown off, an orc doctor will just come by and be like, shit, and he'll just like pick up a piece of metal and just like shove it on, and it just works because the orc believes that it'll work and the doctor believes that it'll work. So it just works, and it's bionic, and there's no wires. It just works.
So an orc cleric would be actually pretty legit.
Yeah, they're called pain boys, is what they call them.
Yeah,
and they mix these little like alchemical solutions that they inject, and they're like, yeah, this makes you like stronger, but it might just really be like Diet Coke and like a sprig of thyme.
Well,
there's not actually any medical power to it at all.
I mean, Diet Coke makes me stronger.
Yeah, but just that idea of like that they conform themselves to the rules of society and technology, even though they don't have to. It's really neat. But that's the kind of dumb stuff that I like in D&D. And I know it doesn't make sense and it's overpowered and stuff, but it's funny. And I like funny stuff.
Hey, as long as my rule is rule of cool, man. If it's fun to play, who the hell cares what other people say? Because you know what? There are too many people on the interwebs, as they say, that are just flat out against things like that. Why? Yeah. Why be against it? It's a game of fantasy and make believe. Like, no. I can go on. I can go at length about that type of stuff.
Yeah, and we're way over time already.
We are.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh no,
it's us too. We do this.
This my Wednesday is my day to come on stream, talk D&D with our guests and with Matt, and just have a good time.
Yeah, just learn about dumb stuff we didn't know.
If people enjoy this and they want to keep coming back, the way they can help us out is by hitting that follow button or hitting the subscribe button later on when it goes up on YouTube.
Or join us over on our Discord.
Yeah.
Search us out on Discord. We're always doing weird stuff. We're going to start an RP thing soonish. TM.
There you go.
We've got a lot of new stuff in the works, some new programming coming out. I don't even know if that's been announced yet, so I'm not going to talk much more about that. But there's a lot of stuff coming.
Yeah, we have a lot of stuff that we're looking into. We're hoping to really bring a very lively connection coming out here soon.
Things are about to be a lot different.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of people who have jumped on board with it. So we've got the backing with a lot of our friends and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going from a crew of about 4 or 5 to probably 15 or 20 in a very, very short order of time. So it'll be great.
Dang, that's legit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's because, and I hate to say this, but it's because Gooey Cube has been so awesome to us. Most of our friends come from Gooey Cube, and we really love it.
That's awesome.
Oh God, it's so bad, Brian. The other night, we spent 4 or 5 hours just arguing about the nature of atoms in Zyathe. And how just how they like come together and how that influences on how much magic power. It's just dumb stuff that nobody will ever care about and will never be published.
But
it's just stuff that we argue about, and it's really funny.
Hey, that's still pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, Brian, if you have time, anybody that's in the stream, if you have time on Sunday, we're doing a one shot in the GUI world of Zyathe. It's going to be ran by one of our very own. What's that?
I got to make a character for that.
Yeah, I know, me too. I'm doing an Unseelie assassin for mine, so we'll see how that goes. So if you can come out and hang out with us, if you have time on Sunday and you want to give me a shout, we might even be able to get you in. Just saying. So,
depends on what time.
The same time as we do these, so 9:00 in the evenings Eastern until midnight. So,
I maybe if I can, if I switch. Oh well, I'll be traveling from Nashville, but I think I should be able to make, or not Nashville, Pigeon Forge. It's a couple of hours away from where I'll hit you up because that'd be actually really cool.
Yeah. A lot of us are using the artwork of characters that we know through GUI Cube, that kind of thing. But as a guest, you come on, you pick a character, you just build a character real fast.
Heck yeah!
We're running a level 8 adventure, so
that'll be fun.
Shot, so
yeah, I'll let you know.
All right, sounds good. For everybody else here, my beer is gone, which means we have our last call. So the tavern is closed. Stay tuned next week for keep an eye on the social media for our guests. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful week. Come hang out with us on Sunday. And it's time to close down the tavern.
Yeah.